Verona soon arrives at his towering office building, where the noise of the city fades behind glass doors and polished floors. As he steps inside, a young woman new to the team approaches him, gently offering a cup of coffee. For once, there is a rare warmth in his tone as he thanks her and exchanges a few polite words before moving toward the elevator. Inside the lift, he unexpectedly runs into a woman from his past. She had once been a close friend, but now is just another face in the office crowd. Verona greets her with a smile, a flicker of old memories in his eyes as he leans in, trying to bridge the gap time has already sealed. She stands her ground, calm but firm, telling him there is nothing left between them and that their connection now begins and ends with work. She warns him not to cross the line or pretend there is anything more. Verona, still wearing his smooth grin, shrugs off her words, insisting they are still good friends. Before she can walk away, he grabs her wrist, his smile darkening. She immediately tightens her fingers around his manhood, causing him pain, and he lets go. Without another word, she steps out as the elevator doors open. Unfazed, Verona keeps smiling to himself as if nothing happened. The lift doors close, locking him inside. He presses the button to his office floor, and the elevator begins its slow rise. Then his phone buzzes again. It's his wife. He answers, and the conversation starts casually, his voice steady, as if nothing in his world had gone wrong. As the elevator climbs in silence, the lights begin to flicker, softly at first, then more sharply, as if something is wrong. Suddenly, the lift jerks to a stop, caught midway between floors. Verona remains calm and composed, ending his call with his wife without showing any sign of panic. Instead, he dials the building technician, his tone sharp and direct. He tells them his meeting is about to begin and demands they fix the problem immediately. The technicians run their checks and soon respond. They report a serious fault on the rooftop and assure Verona that a team of mechanics is already on their way up. They urge him to stay calm, promising they are handling the situation. However, the delay continues. Verona calls his assistant, who now sounds stressed. She tells him the clients are growing restless, tired of waiting, and some are considering leaving. When she asks what to do, Verona's response is cold and clear: to keep them there at all costs because he is on his way. As he speaks, a strange low humming begins to fill the elevator, an unnatural sound creeping through the walls. Verona pauses, alert, and quickly contacts the technician again. Their reply comes in broken fragments. They had tried to start the generator, but it failed. Then the eerie sounds grow louder. Something is happening on the rooftop, for something the mechanics were not prepared for. The technicians suddenly scream in terror as chaos erupts. And just like that, the communication line goes dead. Trapped in the silence of the stalled elevator, even Verona's calm begins to crack as strange noises, failing power, and the technician's screams swirl relentlessly in his mind. A growing urgency stirs within him. He can no longer wait and must find a way out. Taking a quick breath, he shrugs off his coat and starts working on the elevator doors. The first door opens easily, but the second, thick and heavy, resists all his efforts. He pushes with all his strength, metal groaning under the pressure. After a hard struggle, he forces it open just enough to slip his head through. Peering outside, he sees a lifeless floor, dimly lit and eerily silent, with no one in sight. Still, he calls out for help, his voice echoing into the emptiness. Suddenly, his phone rings again. It's his wife. He answers quickly, hearing the tremble in her voice as she describes news reports of destruction sweeping through the city and someone persistently knocking at their door. Fear colors her words. Verona tries to soothe her, urging her to call the police, but she explains the lines are jammed and no one is answering. A flicker of worry crosses his face. Without hesitation, he dials a friend, instructing him urgently to go to his house because his wife needs help immediately. The friend leaves at once, but soon encounters chaos on the streets, cars at a standstill, blaring horns, and choked traffic. Speaking into the phone with concern, he warns that the heavy congestion might delay him. Time moves slowly inside the elevator, but outside, the world is unraveling rapidly. Verona calls his wife again, and this time her voice sounds weaker, trembling with fear. She tells him her heart feels heavy, as if something terrible is near. Verona struggles to believe her fully, suspecting it might just be panic, but an uneasy feeling begins to settle within him. Unlocking his phone, he pulls up the news, and what he sees chills him to the bone. The city is in chaos. Something unnatural is happening to people. Ordinary citizens are turning violent, their eyes empty and their faces twisted with rage. They attack each other with savage fury, blood flowing freely in the streets while buildings burn like fragile candles in the wind. Among the devastation, several laboratories are already engulfed in flames. As the news continues to play, a strange noise draws Verona's attention back to the open elevator door. He leans out once more and scans the empty hallway. This time, he sees movement, people running in terror, fleeing from something unseen. He waves his hands and shouts desperately for help, but no one stops or even looks at him, their fear too overwhelming. Suddenly, a body collapses near the elevator opening, and Verona jolts as he recognizes her, the same woman who was with him earlier in the lift. Her eyes are wide with panic as she begs him to pull her in. Without hesitation, Verona grabs her arm, trying to lift her inside, but something else is holding her back. He pulls harder, straining with all his strength, but the other force overpowers him. She is yanked away, screaming, and then silence falls. Verona gasps, unable to see the face of whatever took her. His breath becomes shallow, and he leans back into the elevator, heart racing and mind spiraling. Outside, the sounds grow louder. Screeches and growls that are clearly not human. He edges toward the door again, just enough to peek, and then they appear. Two figures stagger into view, their clothes stained with blood and their faces twisted with hunger. Their flesh is torn and their eyes hollow. Verona freezes upon seeing those zombies. He slides away from the door and sinks to the floor, stunned beyond belief. Everything is real. The virus, the destruction, the panic. Everything is falling apart, and now he understands why. The city is not just in chaos. It is being consumed. The creatures creep closer, sniffing for life. Verona holds his breath, but before they reach him, a noise distracts them, a distant voice. They turn and begin to follow it, disappearing into the shadows, leaving Verona alive for now. While Verona is lost in chaos, his phone rings again, a call from a friend who sounded troubled and confused, saying he is standing right outside his door and asking what to do next. Verona tries to explain the horror unfolding inside, but his words fall flat and his friend can't grasp the not even a hint of the danger looming there. The more Verona tries to explain, the more his words feel useless. At that very moment, the technician calls back too, informing him with a cold, careless tone that the mechanics they'd sent have gone silent. No contact, no sign of life. The lift was still broken and nothing has been done, offering nothing but an apology that feels too empty for the moment. Verona tries to speak, to lay out the truth, but even the technician couldn't piece it together. And before he could catch a breath, a zombie girl appears from the shadows, her hands reaching for his throat, her grip cold and fierce. Panic floods Verona's chest as he struggles, fighting for breath, struggling in her grasp, and just barely manages to break free. He stumbles back, his heart racing, watching as she tries to force her way in. Fear takes hold, and he snatches a metal handrail, swinging it with everything he has. Again and again he strikes until she collapses, lifeless and still, but her blood pours out thick and dark, creeping toward him, soaking his clothes. Desperate not to be mistaken for the undead, he grabs a bottle of water and begins washing the blood from his skin, scrubbing away any sign that he might not be human. He pushes her body aside with the rod and slumps down, breathing heavily, pulling a cigarette from his pocket and lighting it with shaking hands. The elevator around him is stained with blood, a mess that threatens to spread, so he pulls files from his bag, tears out the pages, and presses them onto the floor to stop it from flowing further. Just as he begins to settle, a sudden noise makes him look up, and there stands his new co-worker, eyes wide and steps cautious. She comes closer and he whispers urgently for her to stay quiet, warning her that the zombies are near, always listening. He tells her they have to open the lift door, no matter what. And together they push and pull with all their strength, but the door wouldn't budge. In the struggle, Verona drops the iron rod, its loud clang echoing through the silent halls, a noise too loud to be ignored. His blood runs cold, knowing that the sound would draw them in. Following this, he tries to pull her inside the elevator, but the space is too tight. Her body wouldn't fit. That's when the zombies come, drawn by the noise. With no time to waste, she turns and runs, leaving Verona behind, alone once again, in the blood-soaked cage of fear. Now the chaos thickens as Verona watches the zombies pour into the building. Fear grips him tight, yet he stands tall, rod in hand, bracing for the worst. But before he can strike, something unexpected happens. One by one the zombies fall, collapsing with thuds and groans. Verona looks on in disbelief as his co-worker appears from the shadows once more. She returns, not just alive, but as their savior, having taken down every last one of them. Relief rushes over them both, and in that moment of peace they laugh, the sound strange and foreign in such a grim world. But joy is a cruel thing in dark times. Before their smiles can settle, two more zombies pounce from nowhere, clawing at her, biting deep, dragging her away in a storm of screams and blood. Verona can only watch, frozen, helpless, his voice rising in horror as she's taken. Alone again, he sinks into silence, crushed beneath the weight of loss. His thoughts drift to his wife, panic creeping in. He calls her again and again, but no voice answers. Despair wraps around him like chains, and he collapses to the floor in grief. Then, just as all hope begins to fade, the phone rings. His wife answers at last, her voice bringing a fragile comfort. She explains she had been locking every door and window, trying to stay safe, but the calm is short-lived. As they speak, Verona hears the shriek of splintering wood, followed by her scream, "The zombies have broken in." Her cries echo through the phone, and Verona is left shattered once more, clinging to a line that goes silent too fast. The world outside begins to shift. Verona turns to the news and learns that the army and police are now sweeping the city, rescuing survivors, fighting back the infected. A flicker of hope returns, but then someone appears in the distance, walking toward the elevator. As he draws near, Verona sees it's another co-worker. He says he's been trying to find shelter too, begging to come inside, but the elevator is small, far too cramped for one more. Verona pleads with him to understand, to stay away, but the man refuses, determined to squeeze in. Before he can force his way through, the groans of the dead grow louder, and the zombies are close again. Terrified, the man turns and escapes, disappearing down the hall. Verona now stares at the elevator's entrance, where more of the undead are gathering. Anger flares within him and he shouts, knowing full well they can't get in, but yelling anyway, daring them to try. As the undead swarm thickens at the door, Verona grips his rod tighter and launches into a desperate frenzy, striking heads, cracking skulls, fighting for breath and space. Blow after blow, he knocks them down, their bodies collapsing in piles as he carves a path through chaos. Amid the carnage, a figure appears in the distance. It's not another monster, but someone familiar. It's his assistant, her eyes wide with fear, voice trembling as she calls for help. Behind her, a wave of zombies surges forward, forcing her to duck into an office, slamming the door behind her in a panic. But before she can lock it, the horde breaks through. They swarm in, and Verona watches, powerless again as she's overwhelmed. Her screams pierce the air, and Verona yells in desperation as another life is lost before his eyes. Following this, there is a brief moment of silence. Verona, who is now drained, reaches for his phone, hoping for news. In a video, a lone reporter appears on screen, broadcasting live in a ruined world. She explains that all news channels have gone dark, that the virus is spreading at terrifying speed, and if anyone still hopes to survive, they must leave the city now. As the screen flickers with grim warnings, the electricity cuts out. The light vanishes and fear creeps in again. If the lift loses power, the doors may not hold. But then gunfire echoes nearby. Someone is outside shooting clean through the heads of zombies, dropping them one after another. Verona rushes to the crack of the elevator door and waves his hand, calling out. The man approaches and it becomes clear he's a police officer. Verona is relieved to see him. The officer checks on Verona, asking if he's been bitten, if the virus has touched him. Verona shakes his head, explaining he's been trapped here since before the outbreak spread. The officer nods and tells him he came with a team to help civilians, but now he's lost contact with all of them. Verona pleads for help, begging him to open the lift. The officer tries, prying and pulling with determination, but the metal doors refuse to budge. After several failed attempts, he pauses, assessing the situation. He tells Verona that opening it from above might work. Before heading up, he hands over a walkie-talkie and presses a gun into Verona's hands. He explains how to kill them, how only a bullet to the head will stop the undead. With that, the officer moves on, clearing the path with precise shots. Verona watches him go, his only hope climbing into uncertainty. As he disappears up the stairwell, Verona calls out one last time, warning him as many of their colleagues went upstairs, none have returned. As the officer reaches the generator room, he manages to restart the power. The lights flicker back to life and Verona watches with hope as the elevator hums back to life. However, something is wrong, as the elevator doors still wouldn't close. Verona quickly realizes that something is jamming them. He leans down, trying to remove the object blocking the doors. Just then, a group of zombies rush in, drawn by movement and sound. Panicking, Verona scrambles to the side, his heart racing. The officer talks through the walkie-talkie, urging him to grab the gun and fight. Verona fumbles but soon finds the weapon. With trembling hands, he begins shooting. His aim steadies as he pulls the trigger again and again, landing headshots just as the officer has instructed. The zombies fall one after another, and silence returns. But as Verona looks at the lifeless bodies around him of people who were once his co-workers, he starts trembling with emotions. However, the officer speaks gently but firmly through the walkie-talkie, telling Verona that these are no longer his friends. They have been gone for a long time, and the things before him want only to kill. He warned him not to mourn them. Verona nods, broken by the truth. Suddenly, a terrifying sound breaks through the walkie-talkie, the unmistakable growls and groans of a swarm of zombies. Then silence follows. No more gunshots, no more voice. Verona calls out, but hears nothing in response. His heart sinks as fear grips him, and he thinks that the officer has died. Time drags on and night falls. Trapped once again, Verona feels helpless and hopeless. He sits on the ground, crushed by grief and guilt. Overwhelmed by anger and pain, he lets out a deep scream that echoes through the building. The noise draws more zombies, Surrounded once more, Verona lifts the gun and places it inside his mouth, ready to end it all. Just before pulling the trigger, a voice comes through. It is the officer, still alive, speaking through the walkie-talkie. Verona jolts upright in disbelief. The officer says he is on the roof of the elevator, and there is an emergency exit hatch on top. He instructs Verona to break it open. Without hesitation, Verona grabs a rod and smashes the ceiling of the lift. With a final strike, the emergency hatch gives way. The officer drops down, breathing hard, his eyes scanning the room. He fires wildly at the zombies pouring in, eliminating them in seconds, then collapses beside Verona. The moment calms, but only briefly. The officer, catching his breath, reveals the harsh truth that he has been bitten. The infection has already begun. Upon hearing this, Verona's heart sinks again. Quietly, he asks how it had all started. The officer looks at him solemnly and says it was no accident. Someone had created the virus. It was meant to be an experiment. The officer continues his story with a voice heavy with regret. He explains that the virus began as a secret experiment aimed at manipulating human behavior or perhaps creating a biological weapon. During the testing phase, everything went terribly wrong. The infected subjects lost all sense of humanity and transformed into zombies. The infection spread faster than anyone could control. One bite was enough to turn a person, and soon not only their city but the entire world descended into chaos. After revealing this grim truth, the officer and Verona sit quietly, sharing memories of their families, the loved ones they have lost, and the faint hope that someone they care about might still be alive. It is a rare and emotional moment of calm amid the nightmare surrounding them. Then the officer makes a heartbreaking decision. He hands Verona a loaded gun and asks him to shoot him twice in the head if he ever falls asleep, not wanting to wake as one of the infected. Verona is shaken and pleads that he cannot do it, unable to kill the officer. Despite the officer's insistence, Verona refuses repeatedly. Frustrated and desperate, the officer attempts to take his own life, but Verona stops him. In a moment of anger, the officer punches Verona, knocking him unconscious. When Verona regains consciousness, he sees the officer lying peacefully, seemingly asleep. Relief washes over him briefly, but it quickly fades as the infection takes hold of the officer's body. His eyes become emotionless and his face twists into a savage snarl. Suddenly, he attacks Verona with unnatural strength, trying to bite him. Filled with terror, Verona has no choice but to act. With his trembling hands, he fires once in the body and twice in the head. The shots echo through the room as the officer finally falls, at last at peace. However, Verona is not safe. During the struggle, he has been shot in the leg and now limps, bleeding. In the distance, he hears a growing sound, as more zombies are drawn by the noise of gunfire. Grabbing the officer's weapon, he begins shooting with steady aim, taking down zombie after zombie with precise headshots. He reloads using the bullets from the officer's gun and continues clearing the area. As he pushes forward, his foot slips on blood or a body, and he crashes to the ground, blacking out. After some time, when Verona opens his eyes again, silence greets him. The room is filled with the lifeless bodies of the undead. He is alone and somehow has survived. Just then, his phone buzzes with a call. He answers with shaking hands. It is his wife. Tears fill his eyes as he hears her voice telling him that she is alive. The army saved her, and she is safe in their camp. For the first time in days, Verona feels a flicker of hope. Verona's mobile battery soon starts to run low and the call disconnects. Despite this, he is filled with happiness because his wife is alive. Determined to escape, he grabs the rod again and works to remove the object stuck in the lift doors that had been locking him inside. After some effort, he manages to pull it out, and the doors finally open. He could hardly believe that he has done it. Stepping out into the hall, Verona finds destruction everywhere. Suddenly, a zombie girl appears. Both her legs are cut, but she keeps coming towards him. Without hesitation, Verona kicks her hard several times until she collapses and dies. He then hurries out to the street and sees the city in ruins. Another zombie girl approaches, but before she could attack, a bullet strikes her in the head, and she falls instantly. OT is revealed that the army is surrounding the area, shooting zombies and protecting the remaining humans. Seeing the soldiers gives Verona hope. He waves his hands desperately, trying to signal that he is safe and needs help. He wants to be rescued, to join the army camp where all the survivors had gathered, and to finally reunite with his wife. With hope in his heart, Verona moves forward, waving to get their attention. The film ends on this scene with a glimpse of hope in the middle of chaos.